Hi everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to configure FTDv using FDM to allow management from the outside or internet to the inside management interface. And we'll do a port address translation from 8443 to port 443. This is useful if you are planning to turn on remote access VPN to your external interface, or if you're trying to use the CDO to manage the outside interface using the Secure Cloud Connector, right? So there are a fair bit of restriction with the current 7.3.1. I've updated the video. Um, you can't really change the management port from 443 for HTTPS management to any other port. So doing port address translation will help you in conserving the port 443 from the outside of the uh, firewall threat defense, right, or FTDv. Okay, now let's move over to how the setup will look like. So, right, so in this setup, I have a KVM setup in my environment using Ubuntu 22.04, using IP tables as the first tier, firewall or port filtering or stateful firewall, and then FTDv right behind the um, IP tables of the Ubuntu, right? In KVM itself, I have a subnet 172.16.1 as the outside for FTDv, and in the inside or in the internal interface of the FTDv, we have 172.16.2, right? And then I will show you using the client 172.16.2.200 to do the initial configuration before allowing a Windows 10 client to access the outside interface of the FTDv, uh, doing a port address translation to the inside management IP address over here. So port 443 will be the management IP. We will do the port address translation using 8443. Okay, now let's hop over to the client in the inside or internal subnet of FTDv. So I have, let's take a look. Okay, so this is the IP address .2.200 of the inside interface or inside subnet. Let's go to the management interface of the FTDv. Okay, I've logged in already. So there's a cache. If not, you will need to enter the admin, right? Username, the default admin, and then the password that you have changed to, right? If not seen how to set up FTDv with FDM, you can check out my previous tutorial. Okay, so once we are in, uh, let's take a look at the management access. As you can see, the management interface is on port 443, right? HTTPS, which is port 443. You can't really change this port by default. There is no data interface set up, so by default, the management IP address is the management IP address that we have configured earlier, which is .45. Okay, so once we're done, the first thing that we want to do is to create a net rule, right? So there are different ways to create net rule. So you're familiar with the conventional using destination IP. I'll show you how to do it. Do it using destination IP address or destination using outside. There are actually two ways you can do net configuration. I know there's a lot of blog out there that it's quite confusing, but once you get the hang of the net configuration, it's actually quite straightforward, right? So let's go to net over here. Okay, and then click on the plus sign here to add a rule. So we're going to give it a name. So this is actually a port address translation from outside to inside. Management IP, right? So we will also deal with a couple of the objects creation, right? With the FDM or the new Cisco Secure Firewall, there's a lot of you know useful object creation that you can help to simplify some of the configuration. We'll go through that as we create the rule. So we'll place the rule before the AutoNet rule. Now we're going to use the conventional or the way that I'm comfortable with, which is to use the net or the port address translation targeted coming in from outside. Now, this part is where it can be confusing for first time user is, do I create configure based on source address or destination address? Now with this example, we're going to use the destination address, right? Which is effectively what I'm saying is that when the packet hits the FTD on the outside interface, right, we want to translate it on the destination port, right? In this case, we will create a custom object, right? So click on create new port as there's no port yet, so we can give it custom out management port, which is 8443, and then select the 8443 as the port that we give it a name so that people who are administrating the firewall after you know what's happening, right? Custom port to allow internet access to FTDv inside management IP, right? Translate from 8443 to 443. Okay. So once that's done, select the port that you have created. Okay, and then our destination is inside. Destination address, you need to create a new object, right? It doesn't create the object for you by default. So inside management IP host 172.16.2.45. Okay, select the inside management IP host and destination port. We will use the default HTTPS port. Okay, so that is how the net rule works, right? So it translates from the outside interface on port 8443 to the inside destination IP address using HTTPS. So it's pretty conventional, right? Way of configuring like your IP tables, if you're familiar with IP tables, right? You can use source address and source port. The order will be different. I'll show you in one of the port address translation example or video that I'm going to do later, right? So, but this is the net that you need to do for your outside to the inside management IP address, right? And with a custom port. Now, if you're not changing any custom port, you can use just HTTPS to HTTPS, right? Okay, so deployment can take some time. So what I do is you can deploy while we do the rest of the configuration. We'll let it deploy. Now once you finish configuring the net rule, you want to create the access control rule. Default, when you set up using the wizard, everything from inside zone to outside zone is allowed, everything else is blocked, right? So we need to create a rule to allow access from the outside interface to the inside management port. Right, so allow out to inside management Yeah, use the whatever naming convention that the company has adopted, right? So you don't have to follow exactly the name, right? But on the zone wise, what we're gonna do is to select outside. We're gonna allow source from outside. You can do a little bit more restrictive configuration by allowing certain set of IP address, right? After the tutorial, I'll lock down to allow only certain sets of umbrella IP addresses and my uh, remote IP address to come in. But for this tutorial, to make it simple, we're going to use any. Right, port wise, we don't have to change anything here because you will allow external outside port of a higher range to come in. The zone for destination is inside, right? Because that's where our management IP sits. Now you need to select the management IP address. As you can see, we have created, once you create an object, you can reuse them in a lot of the other configuration that you can do. Right, port is going to be HTTPS because the destination port has not been changed. We are only changing the port when it reaches the FTDv itself, right? So click OK. Okay, we should have deployed the previous configuration. Okay, now let's look at. Okay, so the last deployment is successful. Now we're going to deploy the access control rule. Okay, you can open up and see the status as it deploys. Takes a couple of minutes to deploy changes. So once it's done, you'll see that there are no pending changes. And that's all you need to configure for net and then access control. Now, if everything is configured correctly, let's head over to my client machine in the internet, right? So I have another, okay, this is where my network is. Now what we want to do is to give it the public name, right? So I do have a DNS setup that I can use to reach the firewall. Let's try. Oops, bad request. Remember, there is no redirect. So as you can see, now I can connect to the FTDv using 8443. Let's go to advanced, accept the risk. Key in the username and password. Okay, you can see I am now being able to manage the IP address of my FTDv from a external client, right? Let me show you using my okay, I have another machine, right, which I'm using the umbrella SIG network, so it's easier. I can show you the IP address. So if I call my external IP address, I should see that this is a DNS, public DNS IP address that is different from where I am. Now let's launch a Chrome. Okay, and then let's do this ps slash 01 dot oops 443. Oops. Mm. Oh, okay. The challenge over here that I have is I have not allowed my IP tables, right, to connect. So let me just tweak my IP tables to allow the Let me tweak my IP table to allow access. Okay, let me just show you a part of the IP table configuration. Right, so it does involve source net and destination net. I'm not going to show you in this video how that is done, but just to give you an idea of how it should look like. Minus t net table minus add, right? So let's make sure that I have okay, this is the umbrella range of IP addresses. Same thing. Let's just get right. Umbrella has 3 range of public IP addresses. You want to make sure that you add all of them in. And then you also need to add in the source routing. Minus tnet. Okay, to route back to the port. Okay, that should solve the issue. Let's check it out. For 3. CO2.ddp.onl should work. Interesting. To destination, though, the 3 should be correct. Let me see. Bear with me. Okay, there's a conflict of rule. I should remove all this, right? Apologies, I should remove all this. Minus tnet minus delete. I need to remove give me the errors. Let me just do this. Not the cleanest way, but because it's netting to my 443, so I need to remove the 443 rule so that it doesn't get netted. And then IP tables minus t net minus delete. Okay, now should be okay. Let's hop over and try this. It should work. Okay, as you can see, I fixed the filter table in front, and now I'm able to log in to my FDM, and if I check what is my IP address.com, I should be able to see I'm coming in from a umbrella IP address, and then if I log in now, we should see that things are the same. And yes, we are in the FTD. Now, if we go over to the objects, we should see that we have configured the outside zone to the inside zone, right, allowing access to HTTPS. My net rules are outside interface, hit custom port 8443 to source inside management IP address, any, right? So that's all it is, right? The tutorial took a little bit longer. I showed you a little bit on IP tables. Now, if you are keen to learn the destination net and source netting on IP tables, if you are configuring a lab like myself that I'm hosting on the cloud and would like to learn a little bit more on how to configure port forwarding through a two-tier firewall using IP tables, do leave a comment below. And if time permits, I will create a video on that. Right, I find that really useful, especially when I'm migrating my lab into the cloud. So thank you very much for watching. Right, and stay tuned for the next tutorial. See you. Bye.